Welcome everybody to today's webinar. We're going to go ahead and get started here at the 10 o'clock hour. Thank you everyone for joining us. Our webinar today, Embracing the New Normal, Plan Your Way Out of Uncertainty. My name's Tracy Thompson and I'll be your moderator today. Before we jump in, I'm just going to briefly go over some of the webinar console. The orange arrow on the right will let you toggle the control tray, open or closed. At the bottom of the control tray, you'll see a chat window. Please feel free to submit your questions at any time throughout the webinar for our presenters via the chat function. We'll have a Q&A later, but if we don't get them today, we'll make sure to respond to your questions after the webinar. For the audio settings, on your GoToWebinar console, you should see an area for audio settings. If you're calling through your telephone, please choose the Use Telephone option. And if you're using your computer speakers, please select the Use Mic and Speakers option. Additionally, I would like to note this webinar is going to be recorded. We will also send out the slides as well as a link to the on-demand recording of the webinar within 48 hours. Please keep an eye out for this email if you're interested in viewing the webinar after today or sharing it with any of your colleagues who couldn't make it. Here's some of the images. I apologize, I missed those. So some of the learning objectives today are learn how your company create what-if scenarios for sensitivity analysis, compare different operational impacts of COVID-19, distinguish which factors can be adjusted and controlled, identify reforecasting based on mandated employee changes and mandated product delivery changes due to social distancing. All right, and here's our agenda for today. We're going to go over some introductions. Armanino is going to present some client trends and responses to the pandemic. We'll have a panel discussion with Clarke and New York Roadrunners. We'll have an overview and a demonstration and questions and answers. All right, so I'm going to go over some of the introductions of today's presenters. We have Brian Rogers, Senior Manager in Consulting at Armanino, Ryan Prindeville, a Partner in Consulting at Armanino, Julia Lee, a Senior Manager in Financial Planning and Analysis at New York Roadrunner, Regina Romanoff, Senior Manager, Financial Planning and Analysis, also at New York Roadrunner, and Sarah Sebi, Financial Planning Manager at Clarke. All right, perfect. And with that, we'll start with the first item on our agenda today. Ryan, I'll hand it off to you.
Perfect. And Tracy, you can go ahead and jump to the next slide there.
All right.
And I think the first thing we'd like to do is recognize that none of this is normal for everybody, that planning is kind of a funny set of words to use in a time when a lot of us are dealing with the most volatility and uncertainty and complexity that we've ever dealt with in our lives, both personally, professionally, maybe in our home lives. We're all presenting from our homes today. So if any of us have distractions in the background, hopefully everybody will forgive us. I'm sure that anybody watching will have some of the similar things. And we're dealing with those distractions and the craziness that happens in our work lives as well. And so part of our presentation today and part of our conversation is going to be around how do we deal with some of that uncertainty and the complexity that's been thrust upon us in this the world that we live in today. Some of the things that we wanted to kind of show up front was Armanino's response to some of the activities that we've seen in the business market. We posted out and made available to all of our clients and anybody who wants to use it, a recovery tracker that gathers data that we are using in part as part of our planning as well internally, but that is available for our clients to look at and to look at what's happening related to cases, foot traffic, public transportation patterns and home and away activities, and is being updated daily and weekly with additional sources of data and analysis to help you figure out how your business can plan for the future as well. So feel free to take a look at that, and that link will be sent out with the follow-on materials as well. Jump to the next one. And Armanino has also built a return to work app as well that we're using in some of our office space where we have to monitor comings and goings of our staff, and it's available for our clients as well if it's useful to you. And as you're thinking about planning anybody coming back to work and back to work, there are a lot of HR considerations for it, right? And to make sure that you do it right. And so as we talk today about some of the things that our clients are doing around planning the what if scenarios and how to come back, be thinking about what does it mean from an operational perspective and HR perspective as well. And if there are tools like our return to work app and the related processes and policies and procedures that might be useful to you, we want to make sure that that's available to you as well. And you can check that out on our website or reach out anytime if you have any questions about how that might apply to your business. So as some of the things we're going to be talking about today as well is how, one of the trends that we've seen with our clients over the last couple months is we need to do daily cash flow forecasting, not just monthly, not just, and change the method of which we have done that. And so some of our panelists are going to talk about some of the things that they've done or how they've had to adjust. And Armanino has worked hard over the last couple months to make tools and techniques available for our client base as well, to think about both balance sheet, indirect and direct cash flows, and to look down into the daily tracker and enable you to make business decisions on the fly. If you're looking for help with that, reach out to Brian, myself, or anybody on our team anytime after this call.
Awesome, thanks, Ryan. And with that, we'll get started with our panel discussion.
Perfect. And so I have a set of questions, but I want this to be an interactive conversation. Give everybody a chance to learn from each other and talk as well. So I'll invite my panelists to make it a conversation as well. And I want to, like I said early on, I want to reflect on the fact that this is a crazy, wild time. Armanino uses the word VUCA a lot internally, and it's an acronym that we talk about, came out of Harvard Business School, means volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And I can guarantee that we're all feeling that right now. We're all feeling lots of VUCA at all times. And so we'll talk a little bit about what are some of the things that maybe you and your organizations have done to plan your way out of that, right? And to deal with some of that VUCA. And so maybe, Sarah, I'll start with you. And the first question I had, it was really about talking just a little bit about background of your company and your planning process, maybe before the last few months and before all the craziness with COVID-19 and the kind of social unrest in the world.
Sure. So this is Clarke's 5th year using Adaptive. So we started by using Adaptive for our budgeting and forecasting, and then we rolled out internal reporting for all of our users so they could log in and view their budget to actuals. Then we built upon that and brought in Salesforce data so that we could better predict future sales and bookings. And then we've also linked in the Office Connect option so that we can build our board packages within Adaptive. We use Adaptive Office Connect for a lot of different what if scenarios, as we have a large model built out in Office Connect that helps us to forecast our cash flow and our debt covenants. We're a privately held company, and so one of our greatest concerns is always ensuring that we meet the debt covenants under our banking agreement. So we use that quite a bit before COVID-19, and once things started shutting down, we started playing with a lot of different scenarios in that model. So it's been really nice to save different versions of it, kind of name those and present them to my controller and CFO as we kind of determine different thoughts around the way this year might turn out and also next year. Our company is in public health with a focus on mosquito control and abatement and aquatic health. So we work with a lot of municipalities. So our concern is not only 2020, but as different municipalities shift their funding away from their mosquito programs and into other areas, what is 2021 going to look like for us? Will how would a downturn affect our cash flow and our ability to meet our debt agreement?
That's perfect, and it's a good example, and some of the things that maybe a lot of the people watching this might not think about, some of those, the kind of ancillary effects as well, the trickle effect that might happen as well, related to changes in government spending and programs and so
Yes.
forth that might not be this year. It might be next year and the year after and so forth as well.
For Clarke, our bigger concern is for this year, a lot of those municipalities have already allocated funds, but how
Right.
will next year look as they struggle to collect on real estate taxes and other things as folks are struggling to make ends meet? And so how will 2021 look for us? And if there's a further dip into 2022, how will that impact Clarke as a company and our different divisions that focus on mosquito control and aquatic health? Mm-hmm.
So to Regina and Julia, your situation is a little different. You're a little bit newer in using adaptive planning and the suite. Maybe tell us a little bit about what it was like to do planning last year, and tell us a little bit about the company and the background first of the organization and what you do, because that's an interesting story. And then what planning was like previously.
Sure. Hi, I'm Regina, and Julie and I work both together in New York Roadrunners in FP&A team. So we plan and forecast all the time. We are about mid-sized company, about 200 to 300 employees, depends. And we are an event planning company, and our event is races. Major race is New York City Marathon that I'm pretty sure a lot of people are familiar with. And as many of you heard, we have unfortunately had to cancel due to the pandemic that we're living in and the uncertain world that we're living in. So yes, this is our first year. We just finished implementing it, I want to say in November, December of 2019. So we kind of had to jump right in. Before this, we were on Excel spreadsheets, which, how can I say this, inefficient way of planning. And also, it doesn't give you the opportunity to kind of come up with something, a quick reforecast if need be. So the fact is that we implemented this and were able to use it right away. We are in so much better state in working from home, to say the least, and less reconciliation and definitely more visibility into the future. Our goal as a company was always to forecast 5 years ahead. And in this world that we're living in, it gives us the opportunity using adaptive to forecast 5 years ahead. We have different copies that we make, and we're able to make changes live and make copies of that, and then reforecast for monthly if we need to. Quarterly is usually was the way we were doing it before because it took forever to compile everything together. We also used, so before we didn't, like I said, everything was in Excel. Now we're able to use adaptive reporting, and it literally gives you a report in about a couple of minutes. Just press a button, everything comes together. We have a lot of ability to put in as much detail as we need in our system. Basically, we custom made our sheet. Sorry. Hello?
Hey, you're okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I got distracted by my
There we
phone.
go. It's VUCA. We get to deal with every time. It's all right.
Right.
Yeah. So before we were able to, we were putting everything in Excel spreadsheet. Now we're putting everything in adaptive, and we have the ability to view everything we need, as much detail or as little detail as we need, and quickly reforecast if need be. That is what we were dealing with before COVID happened, which was great on its own. Once COVID happened, we kind of had to regroup and really needed a faster visual than we already was able to get from adaptive, which at that time we couldn't even imagine, like, how much more faster can we get a forecast going? Well, we worked with Brian from your team, and we came up with a great ability how to forecast even faster. We created a wonderful calendar where all our events were listed and applied different assumptions based on what we thought was going to happen in the current situation or our near future situation or even a year from now. So that gave us the ability to even do a faster forecast and present it to our senior leadership and then present it to the board. So we are definitely loving using Adaptive, and we're learning. And every day we feel like we're learning something new, and Adaptive could do something even better and faster for us. So, thank you for that. And
that's great to hear. Well, it sounds like in both situations, with both organizations, with Clarke and New York Roadrunners, have a situation where you're dealing with a lot of external influences that are out of your control, and the scenario planning and adjusting the plan ready and frequently on the fly is really important, right? And that this is something that maybe able to learning even more how to do than we would have before. And Sarah, maybe I'm curious to talk to you a little bit about that. Is that prior, you'd mentioned previously that you have a distributed team using the platform to do your planning. Did anything change? And so maybe talk a little bit about that process.
So we have about 80 users on our Adaptive instance, and they're spread all over the country. Our various service offices, the manager of each service office can log in at any time during the month and check their expenses, and all of our sales reps throughout the country and internationally can review their open orders, their sales year to date through the end of the prior day. We use integration and update Adaptive every morning with our results through the end of the prior day. So that's been nice as we've been having conversations about things that are changing and that we know. Folks are emailing me as they're running their financials and asking questions about certain transactions or things that they're looking for. We get some emails from our general manager in Australia at 9 o'clock at night when he's running Adaptive and looking for something in a report. So it's great that we have folks in the tool at all different hours of the day, actually running the reports, drilling into things, and looking at their what they're responsible for in terms of sales and expenses.
And then I suspect that the scenarios that each one of them are facing in regional areas, because we're in this VUCA crazy world today, while we're all facing some of the similar challenges, there are regional and distributed challenges you're facing in each of your planning areas as well, where the assumptions have to change by locale as well. Is that true?
We have some very different scenarios that we're running for our folks that are in our international division, where they sell our mosquito control products internationally. We have very different scenarios happening for our service divisions, our mosquito service application division versus our aquatic health application division. So we're able to handle each of those divisions individually based on what they are aware of is changing.
That makes sense. So maybe Julia, as kind of February turned into March, and maybe the news started shifting, and the New York Roadrunners team started to learn about, okay, we might have some impacts here. What were some of the biggest challenges you faced kind of in that transition period?
I guess the biggest challenge is to have the most current up-to-date data available for the business to make decisions, but it's like changing every single day. And then we have weekly races that's being held every week. And we have like 2 or 3 races, including like the marathon and the 5 borough series, which is like big. And then we've been canceling them because obviously we can't be running like close to each other. And then when we gather around at the start or finish, like for example, marathon, we have like 50, 60,000 people gathered like at one place. So it's very dangerous. So it's very hard to predict. But so we built this scenario with Brian, and we've been working with him last couple of months. And then we so I was thinking, when are we gonna ever use this? Because it's like middle of the year already. But like last board meeting, which was last week, my CFO came to me and then she's like, oh, I need to present different scenarios to the board for next fiscal year. So our fiscal year is from April to March. So they want to plan for next April. So like, how many races should we cancel, or can we have a race at a lower capacity? Like those kind of thing. And then she wanted like a aggressive model, like normal base model, or like worst case scenarios, like all these different versions. So I'm like, thank God we built that scenario, and then we finally got to use it. And then I was kind of worried because we were kind of testing here and there, but it actually worked because I was kind of doing like manual checks here and there. And then, I mean, and then they first thing they asked me is like, is this really working? Does this model like really calculating correctly? I'm like, yes. So it was
Brian, I'm
very,
going to loop you in here, Brian. I mean, we have two examples here in Clarke and New York Roadrunners, but you're seeing this with a lot of other organizations as well. Are these scenarios of having to pivot quickly and adjust the planning process, is that a unique thing, or is this across the board with
everybody's doing it? I mean, I think that's the beauty here. I mean, by the way, I know I was a client of this product too before I became a consultant. I went through the 2008 debacle, reforecasting with the same solution, and it was huge because in Excel, I mean, you get your couple of versions or even one version, maybe you've got 30, 50 megs in an Excel file, and then you want to copy that and make changes and compare. You're just really looking for trouble, especially if you had a process I did where you had all kinds of spreadsheets, you sent those out, and then they came back together, and you want to reforecast using that same process. It's really a nightmare. So if you have a consolidated solution, I think it works better. But what we're seeing that, and I think they said it in the Workday adaptive earnings call, that clients were reforecasting, I think, 30 times more frequently in this COVID period than they would have otherwise. Just the volume of versions and scenarios, and what if we did this, what if we did that, and that's how I used it too in 2008. Which was great because you could be a whole lot more strategic as to what you're going to change. You don't have to do a knee jerk and, well, we just got to get rid of half our team kind of thing. You can say, wait, we can reduce our merit increases, we can reduce our discretionary spending, our travel, our delay some of our capital purchases, get financing and some other things. You can really look across the whole spectrum of the company and make some changes and be very strategic, and maybe kind of hit the dip and recover a little faster than you would otherwise if you got a pretty good plan in place. So, but we're seeing this, Ryan, across the board with all clients. How do we reforecast quickly and get ready for the next board meeting when this question is going to be asked? Yeah.
Well, I was going to, jump it back to Sarah on that point is, Sarah, you talked about the distributed part of the process, but what did Clarke have to do a pivot in terms of the way you were planning as well in March and April?
Yes and no. For a lot of our customers, the funds were allocated already for this year on a governmental level. But we did have to do some pivoting in terms of our international forecast and how are things looking, because obviously our international folks travel a lot, and all of a sudden they're stuck at their homes just like the rest of us. And so we had to do a big pivot in terms of, okay, what is our travel expense going to look like? What are our operational expenses going to look like? We're going to have to add some additional operational expenses in as we buy some additional PPE for our folks are still going out and spraying in the evenings and spraying backyards and managing the care for different aquatic water bodies. So we needed to kind of shift funds and figure out where our spending was going to be cut, where our spending was going to be increased, and so that we could better understand not only our spending as a whole, but we also monitor the profitability by each of our divisions and how that's going to look by the end of the year. So there was some pivoting and a lot more what if scenarios for 2021 for us.
Makes sense. Regina, you made a comment the other day, and I think it was interesting about the expectations of your board and your leadership on what you could do related to the scenarios and what you could plan for, right? And there, I believe there was a comment, something around your capabilities in terms of replanning and reforecasting last year versus what you've had to do today, and then maybe the results and what's going on, kind of the board results today. Maybe can you talk a little bit about that?
So what we were using in the past was an Excel sheet that needed a lot of reconciliation to come up with a compiled report. And what we have now is actually a reporting system of where we have the actuals. I didn't mention that before, where we're also bringing in the actuals from a different system. So there's definitely a linkage. And now we have the budget or the forecast. So we're able to compare all of that at the same time, plus scenario planning as well. So the board could see all different views at the same time if need be. And if we cancel 1 or 2 races, we're able to see how, a faster way to see how does that impact us financially. And then, they'll make decisions based on that and apply different assumptions, as Julia mentioned before, like the capacity decrease, probably not increase, but, and what other tools we may need to make this a safer run for the runners and things like that. So, and into the future, what it looks like.
Has the reaction from, leadership and the board kind of been positive towards your ability to answer their questions now?
I believe so, but I will defer this question to Julia. She works with them.
Yeah, our senior executive team is very impressed by Adaptive. But after the board meeting, I asked my CFO, so were they like impressed with Adaptive? But she was like, they had so many things to worry about right now. So they just made a simple comment that it's really great, but they had to like talk about other serious stuff.
Well, that's a really good point, is that in this time, everybody in every role has got a lot to worry about and a lot of things going on that they're focused on getting through the day and getting on to the biggest next point to challenge, the next point to tackle, right? And if we can make things a little bit easier for ourselves and for our teams to work together, to have access to the right information at the right time, to have visibility to the information that we need, and to pivot on the fly, those are really important, I think, benefits that we can enable ourselves with. So maybe Sarah, what is this a new normal? What does the new normal look like for you related to planning and Adaptive, or do you know yet?
We don't quite know. The nice thing about Adaptive is that it frees up my time, our staff accountant and our senior staff accountant's time to spend more of their time on calls helping folks with their various thoughts around their expenses. Whereas before we would just like Regina and Julia said, we would spend hours sending out Excel reports, just emailing and emailing and emailing.
Yeah.
So
Right.
Now we have a lovely email at the end of the month that says, dear users, our month end close is finished. You can log into Adaptive and look at your reports. So it allows myself and those two ladies to spend more time with our budget managers, actually having conversations as opposed to compiling Excel and sending it out to them. It's really, in the past few years, made us more of partners with our budget managers and our executive team, as opposed to just maintaining Excel files.
Well, I think getting your actual data in there on a timely basis is huge. I think everybody touched on it. Now, and I know, so New York Roadrunner, you got your NetSuite on an hourly update, right?
Yeah.
So trial balances and transactions are being loaded on an hourly basis into Adaptive. Sarah, I don't remember what we were doing.
We are every morning.
How often are you? Every morning? Every day?
Every morning through the end of the close the prior day, which is great.
Yeah, that's great.
Every hour helps us see things quicker, like just to make sure things went in the right way. Like, you could catch them too, so.
Yeah, we catch miscodings a lot a lot faster than we used to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So do we think? I'm curious, you know, and kind of across the panel too, is do we think that the pace that you're reforecasting and planning will permanently change the way maybe you use Workday Adaptive going forward? Is this a new pattern that we're going to probably doing reforecasting and replanning on a faster pace now? Is that something we expect? Regina?
Yeah, so we actually have a new VP of finance, and you know she's coming from a different company, and we were doing reforecasts every quarter, and she's kind of pushing for the fact to reforecast on a monthly basis, and having the adaptive gives us that ability. We're not there yet, not gonna lie, but you know we're getting there. We're slowly there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we budget on an annual basis. We used to do that, but since we have the capability, so I think not this year, but when we have time, like next year or something, then we're gonna go into monthly budgeting.
Yep. Already got some ideas for you there.
This is the earliest we've ever reforecasted. We usually wait until we're a calendar year company, and we usually wait until probably July or August to start reforecasting for the year. Whereas this year we were talking early April and starting to do our reforecast version 1. So it's definitely taught us, oh, we can get to this a lot earlier in the year.
Yeah.
What was the or go ahead, Regina.
Oh, sorry. It gives us the ability to kind of reforecast every day if we wanted to. Not reforecast, but let's say we have a forecast or budget, I want to say, and then something changes literally after we submit the budget, we agree on the numbers, and a week later, we already know something's changed. It gives us the ability to go in and change that number without waiting until we open up the next forecast and a window of like a week or two to reforecast. So we're able to actually update our numbers daily if we need to. I'm not saying we're all going to do that, but it's kind of, it gives you the ability to put it all in one system rather than keep it on a separate spreadsheet and then maybe forget to enter it later.
Well, I suspect you have a very real situation where right now the fluidity day to day, week to week, where a governor or a mayor or a borough leader or somebody can say something and rapidly change your plan for next week or for this Saturday or for whatever the event coming up might be. That and you have to replan the coming weeks, months, and year as well. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, correct.
And the information may come from many more sources than you ever anticipated either, and whether it's real information or not, I suspect as well.
Yeah.
Are you're probably having that situation a little bit less, right, Sarah? Meaning that because you're a little bit planned out for the next 3 to 6 months.
Right. And we are deemed an essential service as mosquitoes. They aren't just a nuisance; they also carry disease. So we're currently we're in a 2020. Things are for the most part proceeding as we thought they might. But if tomorrow that changes and for a state has a ramp up of COVID and says no, you need to scale back, we have the ability to make a change in our scenarios.
And we're going to have Brian show us a couple of things in a few minutes, but maybe I'm curious, is there anything that you wished you would have had over the last 2 months, 2 to 3 months, and that we hadn't seen done yet, or that if somebody was about to embark on an adaptive journey, right, over the coming months, something that you would have said, oh, we wish we would have done this earlier, something like that. Is there anything like that anybody'd like to share?
So we just, as you know, we just started using Adaptive in January. So we're kind of in the process of building all these processes and policies. But I think one of the things I would have wanted to learn before was Office Connect, because I just had it installed in my Excel like a month ago or something when I was talking to Brian. So I don't really have any knowledge in how to use them. So I would have wanted some like training on it, how to use it, because it looks like Sarah's company is using it a lot, and it helps with a lot of reports. And we just use the HTML report, and sometimes it's hard to, I mean, we just have the basic ones for now because it's still early stage. And then, I mean, I learned a lot from Brian how to create those metric accounts and using the attributes and linking to different sheets. So I think that's going to really help, but I still need to learn more about the Office Connect.
Yeah, I'll cover. I do have a quick little demo I can get with the Office Connect, but just for the audience, I mean, in general, Office Connect is the Workday Adaptive Planning. It's their add-in to Microsoft Office, so it allows us to optimize, really dynamically connect all your data from an Adaptive Insights Workday Adaptive Planning model into Excel, Word, or PowerPoint. So it's very easy to update, a month, a quarter, any of that data, and I'll show you that in a little bit. But yeah, I think, when that first came out, we saw all of our clients jumping on that big time. I know I personally spent a lot of time transferring Excel to PowerPoint, earlier in my career. Glad to see that.
It's our board packet is in Office Connect, and it just, we pull in our actuals and it updates over to our PowerPoint slides so easily. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
Used to take me days to get it ready, and it's wonderful.
That's a really good point, and I appreciate that, Julie, and sharing that, because sometimes it's not always easy to share things that we wish would be, that we have to learn and do the next thing as well. And I think it's important for the audience to be thinking about that this is a journey, right? And that like any platform, product, tool, anything else, we should be constantly learning and looking for what can we do to make it better. And we hope that these kind of forums provide some of that opportunity to learn from each other and to pick up a nugget or two. And if everybody walks away with one or two nuggets of something that they can use in their daily life, then I think this panel feels like we've probably done our job to help people out. So that's a really good point. Did you have any other nuggets, Sarah, that you'd like to share?
Well, I was going to say, and we're year 5 of Adaptive, and we are redoing, with Brian's helping us, to change the way we forecast for our 2 service divisions. We've kind of realized over the past year that the way we originally planned it out 5 years ago is really no longer working for the company. So
you mean your business changed? What?
Yeah, what?
Changed, and the way we want to forecast cash flows, billings by customer has changed. What we wanted back then is not what we want any longer. We want it to be a little easier to drill all the way down to that customer dimension. So Brian's helping us to build out a new service revenue forecast sheet, and it'll be really great for the managers of those divisions as well as our sales reps who actually have to go in and take a look at that when we do our forecasting.
That's another really good point. So I'll take the note on that one. It's kind of like the always evolving situation, right? Meaning that there is no done, right? We might go live with the initial version, but that your business is going to change over time. The world may change around us, the people may change, the expectation may change, and we need to look at how we're using a platform and continue to evolve it and leverage the knowledge, leverage each other's expertise, leverage outside help to learn and evolve, and know that what worked 3 years ago, or even at the start of an initial implementation, may not be the same thing that's going to work at the end of the year, because surprise, the whole world may change around us, or our business may have to change quickly as well.
And Ryan, one of the things that I'll show you in the demonstration too is the user experience, I think, has evolved quite a bit in the Adaptive product, especially in the latest release. They call it active dashboards, but there's a way now we can essentially either use Process Manager or these dashboards to really make it a user-friendly way to interact with the solution and get more people that maybe weren't as, financially savvy and, spreadsheet jockeys, as I like to say, involved in your planning process, and really get more collaborative with them. And, they could see graphs and things that might resonate a little better.
Well, maybe that's a good transition. And so I'd like to thank the panelists for being so forthcoming and sharing with us. And maybe we'll transition into Brian. Why don't we transition into you showing us a couple of things about the product, and we can leverage on the stories and kind of continue for the next few minutes.
Yeah, awesome. Why don't we hit the next slide here? Yeah, so so just a couple quick slides, and then I'll jump in and show the model real quick. What we have here, so this product is called, they just changed the name, but it's Workday Adaptive Planning. It is a comprehensive corporate performance management solution in the cloud, but it's specifically designed to do your modeling scenarios, monitoring performance, a full set of reports. I'll show you some of those, but analyzing current and past performance. It is a multi-tenant in memory, so really with cutting to the chase there, you make a change, you hit save, it's already there. You run a report, it's instantaneous. It does have this elastic hypercube technology, which has a funny cool sounding name to it, but essentially means that we're going to calculate what we need to in the model as you're looking at it. So it has an efficient way of distributing the calculation process in the model, makes it more efficient, and as we kind of touched on, really integrate with any source. It's an open API solution, and like I said, most clients are integrating on an automated basis with their general ledger system. We see CRM, we see operating system, data warehouse, all kinds of different things that most clients do, integrating data into Adaptive. Next slide. So, and what I was touching on, and you kind of get the sense for it and what I'm going to show you, but what we really want to do over time specifically is make this a real collaborative, comprehensive, and continuous process where we're involving really everybody in the organization, not just finance, but HR, IT, operations, marketing, sales. Make it so that it's a very very flexible and user-friendly. For your business users, you're going to have that powerful modeling engine and fast planning, which again, in the COVID scenarios is critical. And I'll show you how we can quickly make some changes and show the differences in just a minute here. But all these I think are really important with any planning solution. And then as we kind of build out this graph, sort of the path to recovery with COVID, we saw, like everybody did, I think in everybody's business, it was about what, March 15th or 13th, somewhere right in there, boom, COVID hit, everything's gonna be different. We sort of went through this total disruption response and recovery, and obviously now we're in this today, but moving hopefully towards recovery and working with a lot of our clients is, like Ryan was saying, what's the new normal? How do we project what's going to happen in the next 3 months, 6 months, 18 months? How are things going to develop? How has our business changed? How's the landscape changed? And what can we do to interact with our team to help that that process? You want to do something that's pretty fluid, which I'll jump in a second. Any comments to add, Ryan, before I?
No, I think it's interesting when you think about it, because what we just talked about, we had examples from Sarah talking about distributing the planning workload to a wider audience, field managers and so forth, and leveraging incoming information. We had Julia and Regina talking about leveraging external information, having to react quickly to public information and news information and adjusting it quickly. It is sort of interesting, that green blob there in the middle of the screen is sort of where we all are, and maybe we slide side to side among that blob depending on where we are and what the news that's hitting us is, right?
Yeah, exactly. All right, great. Why don't I show my screen here? Okay, beautiful. And is everybody looking at my adaptive screen here? Awesome. All right, great. So what I have is a couple things I want to show real quick. One is, dashboards. These have gotten really slick over time in the solution. Again, this is a Workday adaptive planning solution. This is the active dashboarding part. This is, again, this is a named user model. And as you'll see here, we've got all kinds of different versions out here. I think I'll show that to you in your other model here, but all kinds of different versions that we'll go through. But we can have sheets with graphics where we can actually show everybody the actual planning sheets right next to graphics, KPIs, and dashboards. What I'm going to do here, though, with my process tracker is go through a scenario where we actually change the plan and see the impacts. This is a process management section of Adaptive Insights, and I've actually created a COVID scenario in this case. And this shows all the tasks that this Sales North manager needs to go through in order to make his changes for the COVID scenario. So any one of these processes can be created, and we can assign individuals tasks within that process. So if I go over here and I go to my COVID scenario, and you can see some of these things are in process and some are, it timed me out here, hang on a second. Some of these things are in process and some are, yet to be done. They're running a little late, so I got to catch up a little bit here. So I'll jump right into my process here, and I'll show you how this works. So if I go to the COVID scenario that I've assigned this manager, we're going to install, I want to make sure I'm starting with a clean slate. So what I've done already in here is I've created a new COVID forecast. So it's an exact copy of my existing forecast. My existing forecast actually had actuals through March, and I'm projecting the rest of the year. As you can see on here, just as a starting point, I want to make sure there's no differences currently in my income statement between these two versions as I go through this. So I've compared that. Yep, I've got a good starting point. And on here, I can give directions for my users. I can say, hey, make sure we've got the right starting point for your particular situation. And in this case, because of COVID and we've had such impacts, and again, you can see I've got actuals in my green data here, and I'm planning the rest of my year. And I had quite an increase in my customer sales. This is a sheet that helps me do, gross margin by customer and product in here. And what I want to do here is really shut off my sales for the rest of the year. We don't know what that's going to look like, but for this COVID scenario, I'm going to go with 600, put it in the end of the year, and I get some immediate, options here proportionally evenly. I'll just do it evenly on this guy. And like I said in the beginning there, it's a real-time in-memory solution. So when I make this change, it's immediately in the database, and I'm adding up to this 600. So I've reduced my full year sales to 600. I'm going to go to my personnel assumptions, and again, because of COVID and the things going on, I'm going to make some changes. This is my assumption sheet where I've actually assumed a 3% raise starting in April, and again, this is a projection assuming I was starting the projection in April. So what I'm going to do is change my raise percent, and I'm going to just make that a 0 for now and save that. So I can change my my task there. And again, you can see where I've been given directions as to what to do. I've got a travel planning sheet that I use to plan my business, and I've just been told by management that we're not going to be traveling for the next couple of months. And I can see, I've got these, let's say there's no travel for the rest of the year. I'm just going to, zero out these. Actually, I want to do a clear here. I can clear those and hit save. And this model, by the way, it's by, it's by event, by seminar, by whatever the travel plan was here. I'm going to basically cut off all of those expenses. And then I'm going to defer some of my capital expenditures. I've got this item for new hire laptops. We buy laptops every time we have a new hire, but we're going to postpone some of that. So I'm going to just do pending on this. What's nice about this, so it's a pre-built capital model, feeds into my balance sheet and into my cash flow, everything else. I could put the whole company's wish list on here, but I've got the depreciation amortization schedules built in. And so what I can do easily is say, you know what, only those items that were approved, roll into these financial forecasts that I have for my COVID scenario. But now I'm going to make this pending. So now this pending item will not affect my financials. And as I'm doing this, keep in mind, I'm on this COVID scenario, a COVID reforecast version here, but I've got all kinds of versions that I could have been, either comparing or using or updating at any given time. We have several different, we have lots of clients that have plenty of different versions out there. So I've deferred my capital adjustments, capital expenditures. I'm now going to review those adjustments. And you can see I've got my COVID versus my reforecast. So I've reduced my revenue by about $500,000. I'm also taking out a bunch on the cost of sales. I've impacted my payroll, and it looks like I'm going to be about 64 grand less right now in net income based on the changes that I've made. But I can easily go through and see these. And in this kind of report too, we can set it up so that, I want to compare any version to any version. Maybe there's 3 different COVID scenarios that you've got going compared to a board approved budget. You could easily create a report like that. Click on review adjustments. Maybe I want to review my cash flow impacts. And then I could pull this up and see the differences here. And again, put some narrative as to what happened. I copied the same scenario, so it's the same through March, but I've got some differences in the following months because of those changes that I just made. And then I can click that.
Curious for Sarah or Julia, is this ringing true? Any of these types of actions? Maybe a simplified version of what some of you guys have seen, but using some of the same features.
So yeah, this is some of them. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah. And then if I go back to my process manager, whoops, I wanted to go to the overview, sorry. If I go back to this guy, you'll see where, all of these items that I had been assigned, they're now completed. So not only can you assign this to one individual, but you can assign it to any individual or groups of individuals, which is nice, and keep track of your plan. And then again, if you're reporting and you have things in Excel, Word, or PowerPoint, you may need to be, updating that package for the scenario or the latest month. In this case, I've got a full-blown package through February, and it's got a trailing, 6 months versus, budget month year to date, February. If I wanted to update my entire workbook, I can just simply hit on this guy, go to the month end March, and then refresh all my sheets, not just one sheet, but every component on this workbook can be updated through March. So works great. You got all your data again, integrated on a timely fashion into Adaptive Insights, but then you can roll it into, in this case, Excel, Word, or PowerPoint, and very easily update all that data. You can see now I have a March month versus year to date, formatted P&L. I can easily determine, what's coming from Adaptive. I can go to my linked cells here, and it'll highlight in blue anything coming from Adaptive, and green titles or anything that's also coming from Adaptive, but it's more text. And then I can always be on a review button and figure out, where this came from. And this other feature, which is new in the solution that I really like too, is you get this all the time in finance. Hey, I really like this report that you've built here, Brian, but I now I need this by all these different levels in the same format. Like, oh, really? But now with the latest upgrade, you can go to your levels and say, you know what, I want to run that for the US, Canada, and the UK. These are my organizational levels straight from the adaptive model I was just in, and I can hit create, and then this will immediately expand my workbook for these 3 additional levels. So now I have a United States, same layout. I've got a Canada version, and I've got a United Kingdom version. So very easy to get this data connected, but even so, when you get it connected, take that maybe small group of reports and expand them by level, dimension, product. You're really not limited there. So those are the main highlights. Should we move to some Q&A?
Thank you, Brian. Yeah,
Sure.
and in fact, I appreciate that, and I think that's really useful kind of overview there. It looks like we've got one question here from the audience, and it's interesting. It looks like maybe this is either a new user or a prospect user, and the question coming in says, what advice would you have for someone about to kick off a new project? Or a change in their planning process using adaptive, over the coming months here. And any of you like to chime in? Julia, you want to chime in? What advice would you have for somebody new about to kick off the process now? Learn Office Connect. I know that. You said that one already. I got that. That's a good one.
I could jump in real quick.
It's good to have like the cash flow too, because our cash flow is not built into adaptive yet. But like especially at this time, like the cash flow is really important to make decisions.
Yeah.
So I would like to see some of that. I mean, I would have worked on that.
Prioritize that in the project.
Yeah. But I think what works really well, Ryan, is somebody's kind of embarking on this whole thing is, well, a couple things. One is, getting your arms around your data. Of course, that's big. Make sure you've got, the critical data sources figured out, and you got some pretty good in integrity to your data, but really taking a pulse of your whole planning team and getting kind of a roadmap as to where you want. Where do you want to fix planning today, but where do you want to fix it in a year, 2 years? How do you want this to evolve? And getting the people, on your team and your company engaged early on in that process. If you get a lot of people involved and they get excited about this thing really takes off and has a transformative impact in a big way to your company. Whereas, we see some clients, they want to solve a little problem, which is fine, but they might be missing the bigger picture, being able to really enable the whole organization to make better decisions faster.
Basically, think outside your box, think outside of your processes you have today, and think of what, instead of building adaptive into what you have been practicing to date, build adaptive into the future and best practices.
Yeah, I like that a lot, Regina. I think that's a good one to even kind of close it on. And there's some other questions coming in, but we'll hold those and we can answer them back to in a package to the client. But think about what you want the company to be acting as, right? Think about the future versus recreating what you were doing before, because this is an opportunity. I mean, these types of opportunities, if you're going to spend the money on the software, you might as well leverage it as a transformative opportunity, right? To change and do things the way you and the team want to do it in the future, right? To make life better for all of us, because like we kind of opened up the conversation talking about it's a VUCA world and there's a lot of craziness out there. We all have to deal with it. Let's not make it harder on ourselves in the future, right? So I want to thank Sarah, Regina, Julia, Brian. Really good conversation. Thank you for your time and for jumping in here. I think it was good, and then a lot of people will find a lot of usefulness in the conversation that we had, and we really appreciate it. So thank you for sharing your stories with us. And Tracy, we'll turn it back over to you for closing remarks.
Yep, I just kind of want to repeat that. Thank you, Sarah, Julia, and Regina. I think the panel discussion was awesome. Overall, a great webinar. And if anyone has any other questions, we will send out these slides with the contact info for Brian and Ryan. You can contact them directly. And also a reminder, this recording will also be sent out so you can share with your team. So thanks again, everyone, for our webinar, Embracing the New Normal, Playing Your Way Out of Uncertainty. And I hope everyone has a great week.
Awesome.
Thank you all.
Everybody. Thanks.
Bye.
Have a good one.